No, to me, it's fascinating because you touch on so many interesting things. And I mean, going all the way back to Iraq, which I once think was referred to as the cradle of civilization, and all the way up to the present. And you know, of course, there's lots of opinions out there about this, but I think that unfortunately, the political situation in there, and this is my opinion, the political situation in our country today is very polarized. And it has become a lot more about control than it has about service, which I really believe was the vision of the founding fathers, was a people who were free. Isn't that the biggest beef that they had with the king? Is basically he still ruled them even though he was an entire continent away, and they wanted to make their own decisions. They wanted to have choices. They wanted to be able to worship as they wished. They wanted to be able to own as they wished. They wanted to be able to prosper as they wished without limitation. And I think what's so interesting is that I also think it's very deep in man's spirit to be free. So the whole thing about grabbing the rattle and being free, and you know, there's a conflict, a natural born conflict that happens when somebody wants to control and somebody wants to be free, and that's where the rub is. And you know,
yeah, it's fascinating when you see in America, when you examine world history, it's this hierarchical system, right? The king at the top and his administrators and military, and then the merchant class, and then the peasant class, and then the slaves. You read Hammurabi's Code, 1728 BC. It's all hierarchical. And matter of fact, the first nation that we have record of that attempted to rule itself without a king was Israel.
How about that?
About 1500 BC when they come out of Egypt. And who controlled everything in Egypt? The Pharaoh. Owned the land, the people, the cattle. Well, when Israel came into the promised land for those first 400 years, no king. Everyone was equal before the law. And the law said there's no respect of persons in judgment. Rich or poor, everyone's the same. Male, female, made in the image of the Creator. Even the stranger living amongst you is under the same law that you're under. And this was the beginning of the very concept of equality on planet Earth. I mean, everybody's equal. There's no king to butter up next to because they didn't have one.
Yep.
And Israel was the first nation with private land ownership. All those boring chapters, if you've read it, where they divide up the land, they do surveys and lots. This tribe gets from the river to the sea. And my mom's name is Tirzah, and there's a story in the Bible of this old guy named Zephaphalad had no sons, and they're dividing up the land, and the girls go to Moses and say, don't we get land too? Is our dad's name going to be forgotten? And Moses said, you get land, just marry someone within your tribe. This was unheard of, individual women getting land and individual families, where in Egypt, the Pharaoh had it. Even if you thought you had land in Egypt, it was conditional of you staying on the nice side of the Pharaoh. You cross him, he'll take your land and take your life. But in Israel, the land was permanently titled to the families. So if they got in a pinch and sold it every 50 years, it came back. This prevented a dictator from getting ownership and making the people slaves again.
Wow.
And so the whole system in Israel was dependent on one thing: the priests teaching the law. Since human nature has this rubber band that wants to stretch back, what they were attempting was counter human nature. Sort of like every computer you buy is preloaded with a virus, and you have to take it to the computer geek to get the virus off there, right? Every person was born with this selfish tendency of wanting to accumulate power, and it was the Jewish priest that had to teach people the law, saying, no, you're not supposed to kill, you're not supposed to steal, you're not supposed to lie, right? And their system worked for several hundred years until the priests stopped teaching the law. Everyone did what was right in their own eyes. They had chaos, and it all started to fall apart, and the rubber band snapped back, and they got King Saul, who turned around and took the land and gave it to his favorites, wealth redistribution, took the daughters and made them be cooks, and son runs before the chariots. He determined the fate of the kids' lives. And then he turns around and kills all the priests, except for one that escaped to David. But this was this first attempt that we have record of an entire nation attempting to be ruled without a king.
Wow.
But it gets even more interesting with Athens and their attempt. I don't know if you have time for that.